Backtracking takes a little bit longer to explain. Just go with me on this. Try this problem. Imagine there are 5 women: Kathy, Debbie, Judy, Linda, Sonia. Each of the 5 women has a dog, and here are the dogs. Each woman has a different occupation. There are the occupations. Each has a different number of children, 0 through 4. And given the information in box 11.2, figure out how many children who owns the Shetland sheepdog has. So it's a logic problem. By the way, these sorts of problems used to appear pretty prominently on the LSAT, which qualifies one for law school. And the thinking is that when you can reason well on your feet, it's a predictor of how well you would do in resolving a case, if you accept that premise. But here goes. From the following information, determine how many adorable children the owner of the Shetland sheepdog has. We're back to these dogs. 5 women, 5 occupations. Everyone has a different number of children. And here are the premises. And this is exactly the way an old LSAT problem, or as they call it, an LSAT, it's exactly the way it would be phrased. Kathy owns the Irish setter. The teacher has no children. The owner of the Labrador retriever is a surgeon, etc. So I've got, what is it, about 11, I think, assertions there that'll allow me to resolve this problem. And once narrowing it down. So in solving the problem, you need to make certain assumptions. So sometimes they turn out to be wrong and they need to be revised. So in those instances, it's useful to have some way to keep track of when and which assumptions were made, so you can go back up to certain points of choice and start over. And this is backtracking. So the women, dogs, children, and jobs problem makes a case in point. So many people solve these problems by setting up a chart, and here's that chart. Like what we see in figure 11.3, it's incomplete, corresponding to the chart of someone who's read only the first 12 lines or so. But at this point, a problem solver can determine that the golden retriever's owner, who is an executive with 4 children, is either Debbie or Linda. So with this, I've narrowed it down at least. So I've gotten to a partial solution with this idea of backtracking on this somewhat complicated problem. Now, we'll say the LSAT, the problems were not this long. They were considerably shorter, but nonetheless, they tapped on the same ideas. So that's the notion. So what I have to do in these instances, if you have some way to keep track of when the assumptions I made, so I can back up to certain points and start over if I have to, then that's backtracking. So back to the bottom few sentences there. The problem solver would enter information into their chart. This lady's from Canada, apparently. She says his and he. But if the problem solver backed up to the point at which he or she made the incorrect assumption, he or she would now know it's Linda, and this information would be necessary to solve the rest of the problem. So it requires ongoing revision. And really this ongoing revision is what they're alluding to when they describe backtracking. So again, if you ever have the honor of taking the LSAT, or to some limited degree, the GRE tapped into those sorts of problems also, which they call the logic section. And the idea is, again, those that can think on their feet and resolve their way through something are likely to prevail. And I got to tell you, the best trial lawyer that people of my generation have ever actually witnessed was Johnny Cochran. And if you don't know who Johnny Cochran is, he was the lead defense attorney for O.J. Simpson in 1995. Now, many people casually believe that O.J. Simpson was actually guilty of murder. But this particular lawyer, Johnny Cochran, was so adroit, so incredibly skilled, could take new information and mold it. And he was just gold. He was, and I wouldn't even call him slick. I think that's a pejorative. I think he was just so very talented, so easy to listen to. He was just absolutely magical that he rose to the top of this superstar legal team. It was supposed to have been Robert Shapiro that was his lead attorney, or F. Lee Bailey, but Cochran was so blessed, so incredibly gifted, that he just became the leader and it was astonishing to watch. So he had this ability to backtrack, to deal with new information and rise up and quash it or address things in a different way. And one suggestion is that these sort of logic puzzles can be an indicant of who has that raw ability, this fluid intelligence.